Good evening, class. This is Mrs. Albright, and tonight we are working on Module 3, Lesson number 16. And our objective this evening is to understand and solve two-digit dividend problems with a remainder in the ones place using place value discs. So we're continuing to work on division. We're just expanding it to another place value and letting the problems get more complex. So make sure you have a whiteboard or a piece of scratch paper so you can practice right along with me, and let's get started. We're going to start with a simple problem, 6 divided by 3. If I were to put this in my place value chart, I would model the 6, my dividend, as 6 ones. Now I wanted to divide this into 3 groups. So I'm going to draw a dividing line here, and then underneath that, since I'm dividing by 3, that's my divisor, I'm going to give myself 3 rows. And I'm going to reallocate these dots that I have in my ones. I'm going to take one of those and put it in this row. I'm going to take another one and put it there, another one and put it there, and then ask myself, do I have enough left to do another round? And in this case, I do. I still have 3 left, so I can exchange that one and move it here. I can exchange that one and move it here. So when I take 6 and I divide it into 3 equal groups, here are my 3 equal groups, I end up with 2 in each equal group. If I were to write this as a long division problem, and this is getting us ready for larger multiplication problems, I would say that 6 goes in, or 3 goes into 6, or 6 is divided by 3 about 2 times. So I would write my 2 up on top, and then I would multiply my 2 by my 3 to see how many of those units that took up by doing the division. And in this case, after we distributed all 6 of these ones, we used up all of them. We didn't have any left over. So in this case, my 2 times 3 is 6, and when I subtract the ones that I did divide out evenly, I end up with no remainders. Now our problems are going to get more complicated. Distribute it out to this group. So you can see now my 3 tens have been divided into 3 equal groups, and there is 1 10 in each of those groups. So over here on my long division format, I would say 3 tens divided by 3, I end up with 1 10 in each group. And when I multiply that and see how many of those original 10s did I use up, I used up all 3 of them. So my 1 times 3 is 3. I used up 3 tens. And I'm going to subtract those because that's what I did over here. I subtracted them, and I'm left with no 10s left to distribute. I don't have to carry any over to the next part of my division problem. So now we call this the bring down step. I'm done dividing my 10s here. Now I'm going to focus on dividing my 1s, and I have 6 ones. So that's where we see the 6 in the problem over here. And I'm going to divide these ones into 3 equal groups. I'm going to distribute that one to that group, this one to the second group, this one to the third group. I still have more ones, so I can continue distributing. And I end up with 3 distribute it out to this group. So you can see now my 3 tens have been divided into 3 equal groups, and there is 1 10 in each of those groups. So over here on my long division format, I would say 3 tens divided by 3, I end up with 1 10 in each group. And when I multiply that and see how many of those original 10s did I use up, I used up all 3 of them. So my 1 times 3 is 3. I used up 3 tens. And I'm going to subtract those because that's what I did over here. I subtracted them, and I'm left with no 10s left to distribute. I don't have to carry any over to the next part of my division problem. So now we call this the bring down step. I'm done dividing my 10s here. Now I'm going to focus on dividing my 1s, and I have 6 ones. So that's where we see the 6 in the problem over here. And I'm going to divide these 1s into 3 equal groups. I'm going to distribute that one to that group, this one to the second group, this one to the third group. I still have more 1s, so I can continue distributing. And I end up with 3 equal groups, and there are 2 in each group. So I ask myself 6 divided by 3, or I can also think of it as 3 goes into 6 about 2 times. And then I multiply 2 times 3 to see how many of those ones were distributed and used up, and all 6 of them were. So 2 times 3 is 6. And when I subtract that, because that's what I did over here, I subtracted them, I took them all away, I end up with 0 left over. So my final answer to 36 divided by 3 is 12. And I can check my answer using multiplication. If I take the number that are in each group, which in this case would be 12, 1, 10, and 2 ones, and multiply it by the number of groups, which in this case is 3, I've got 1, 2, 3 groups. When I multiply those, I end up with 36, which matches the number I started. So I know that my division problem is correct. Now it's your turn to try. We have 48 divided by 4. And this problem should divide out evenly. We shouldn't have any remainders. Now we're going to learn what to do when we do have remainders when we are dividing larger numbers, starting with a simple one. Here we have 5 divided by 4. If I put this in a place value chart, and I start with 5 ones, and I'm going to create 4 equal groups because that's what I'm dividing by. And I'm going to distribute these ones. So this one goes to that group, this one goes to this group, this one goes to this group, this one goes to this group. So when I have my problem 5 divided by 4, when I take 5 and distribute it out into 4 equal groups, I end up with only 1 in each of those groups. So 5 divided by 4 is 1, but then you notice I still have this one left over. When I multiply 1 times 4, you can see that I've used up 4 of those dots. So that's where I get my 4 here. And then when I subtract, because that's what I did over here, I distributed them or I took them away from this value, I'm left with that 1. So my final answer to 5 divided by 4 is 1, remainder 1. So we're going to take this a step further, and now we're going to look at 45 divided by 4. So I'm going to rewrite this in, I call it the house, for our long division format. I'm also going to use my place value chart with my 1s and my 10s. I will model my dividend, 45, so I have 4 10s and 5 1s. And I'm going to divide that into 4 equal groups. I'm going to be using the distributive property. So with this problem, I am going to start by dividing my largest place value, my 4 10s. I'm going to divide my 4 10s into 4 equal groups. So this 10 can be distributed, this 10 can be distributed, this 10 can be distributed, and this 10 can be distributed. So when I take my 4 10s and divide it into 4 equal groups, I end up with only 1 10 in each of those groups. And then I multiply 1 times 4. That gives me 4, which shows that I used up all 4 of these 10s here doing my distribution. 4 minus 4 is 0, so I do not have any 10s remaining. So I can move right over to my 1s place value. So now I'm only going to focus on dividing my 1s, and I'm just noticing I did not model my number correctly. I need to have 1 additional 1 drawn there. So now I can start distributing my 1s into my 4 equal groups. 1, 2, 3, 4, and now I look at what I have left and I ask myself, is there enough to do another round to put 1 more in each of these groups? And the answer is no, because I only have 1 1 left. So when I take 5 1s and divide it into 4 equal groups, I end up with only 1 1 in each of those groups. So that's where I'm going to write my 1 up here in top of my 1s column. And then 1 times 4, I used up 4 1s. And then 5 minus 4, I subtract, and that should match the 1 that I have left over. So my final answer is 11, remainder 1. Now it's your turn to practice, so make sure you go back and rewatch the video if you need to, and use your scratch paper, draw out your place value chart so you can practice dividing these numbers. These are designed just like what I showed you in the lesson, where it starts off with the simpler one where you only have the ones value, and then we're adding onto it and adding a tens value that should divide evenly. So start with the simpler ones, 8 divided by 3, and then move on to 68 divided by 3, 5 divided by 2, and then 85 divided by 2. Bring any questions you have back to class, and we will continue working on this tomorrow. Have a great night.